So I want to talk about the phenomenon of alpha cucks. And what are alpha cucks? These are, masculine men who, despite being successful and high status, among men and also with women, they relentlessly cuck for women or white knight for women, and specifically for feminist talking points and feminine imperatives and feminine sensibilities, however inapt those may be, and I'm not going to name names, but you can probably think of a handful of examples. Hollywood is absolutely chock full of alpha cucks. These are, kind of strong, masculine men, socially well-adjusted, wealthy, successful, self-assured, self-confident men who nevertheless relentlessly cuck for women and feminism and for feminine sensibilities and preferences. And, in Hollywood, that's in many ways a requirement of the job, because Hollywood is run by, who, and that's part of their agenda. We'll get to why in another video. But in Hollywood, it's part of the job, but there are also some of these alpha cucks, in our circles as well. Men who are, to all outward appearances, masculine and self-confident and self-assured, but nevertheless cuck and or white knight for feminist women in one way or another. And there's a couple different motivations for this. One of them is selfish motivations, man-whoring. And, feminism ensures a constant supply of liberated, empowered women for man-whores to take advantage of and to, exploit for their own short-term pleasure, which usually does not even involve reproductive success. And therefore, it's like even worse than parasitic behavior, because they are damaging the reproductive commons without actually achieving any reproductive success by doing that. But it's not always just selfish man-whoring impulses that lead men to seemingly alpha men, seemingly masculine, self-confident men to cuck or to white knight in these ways. It can also be a misguided protective impulse. Men have protective impulses and instincts towards women, and that's understandable and even beneficial when those are your women or part of your family or your women personally. You know what I'm saying there. But these protective impulses that men naturally have towards women, a lot of them get misapplied to thinking that protecting women also means protecting women's freedom to choose to do anything they want to do, no matter how destructive it is or how self-destructive it is. And that isn't the case, obviously. So allowing women to engage in destructive or self-destructive behavior is not protecting them in a legitimate or sensible way. And so that's a misapplication or misdirection of a protective masculine impulse towards women, and applying it naively in assuming that you have to protect their articulation and exercise of feminist priorities. And that just simply isn't the case. That doesn't protect them in the long run, and it certainly doesn't protect society or protect men from potential harm that these feminist impulses can do. When applied to political questions or whatever, society in general, a lot of feminine intuitions are completely out of place in these traditionally masculine domains. They may be very well applicable, perfectly well applicable in like a domestic context or a child rearing context, but they just don't work at political scale or in the larger society. You can't structure a society according to feminine sensibilities, or you can't structure political institutions or states according to feminine sensibilities. It just doesn't work. It works on a familial scale, or maybe at most a tribal scale, but at a very primitive small scale, not at a large scale. And so those are inappropriate at that scale. And so, cucking or white knighting for the articulation and exercise and imposition of those sensibilities at a large scale is counterproductive and destructive. And a lot of it is rooted in this protective impulse, which happens to be misguided in this case, to protect women's freedom to choose to do absolutely anything, or meddle in anything in whatever way that they want, no matter how destructive or counterproductive it is. And so why do seemingly masculine alpha males do this kind of stuff? Well, people with good jobs and booming portfolios also don't really question, neoliberalism either, or, global capitalism. Don't do it because they have too much to lose and the system's pretty much working for them. And that's kind of the situation that a lot of these alpha males find themselves in vis-a-vis women. They're pretty much able to get what they want from women most of the time. So, why rock the boat by counter-signaling them or telling them to get back in the kitchen when, they're already getting a pretty good deal for the most part. So that's one reason. And, but that's the key to addressing this issue. Because in the past, men haven't had to choose between achieving success and status among other men and, pandering to or catering to women or women's sensibilities, because for, a generation or two, you had to do both, basically. If you didn't cater to or pander to women's sensibilities, in all domains, no matter how inappropriate, then you had trouble achieving success, because those feminist platitudes were kind of so universally accepted that it was actually considered a little bit backwards or primitive not to bend over backwards to cuck and to white knight for women. And so you could actually lose status and success among men for not pandering to women in these ways. But I think things are starting to change a little bit. More and more people are starting to understand the costs, because the costs are building and they're getting harder and harder to deny. And there are more and more men who don't have the, let's say the social equivalent of the good job and the booming portfolio, right? So they don't have as much to lose by counter-signaling women's inappropriate sentiments and sensibilities in every aspect of public life. So they can counter-signal at will, and it's getting more and more to be the case that men who suck up to it, who cater to it, who pander to it, are a little bit ridiculous. And that's obvious to everyone. Whereas before it was an enforceable kind of expectation, that's getting less and less the case. And so now, and what we have to do is accelerate this trend so that, men kind of have to choose between cuckery and white knighting to women and having status and success among other men. And so, if we don't let men have status and success among men while pandering and cucking and white knighting to misplaced feminine sensibilities, then this problem will go away. But until we do, until we make that costly within male status hierarchies for men to engage in, then the problem is going to persist for some time of these alpha cucks, men who seemingly have everything going for them, but they still relentlessly cuck or white knight for misplaced feminine sensibilities.